Good morning, everyone. Bleeds happen. Complications don't have to. I'm the CEO of Saranas. We're a medical device-based company based out of Houston. And just before I begin, Saranas is actually a Latin derivative of the word Saranas, which is the canary. We're serving to be the canary in the coal mine for the interventionist. And I'll talk to you a little bit about our innovation, which is the early bird bleed monitoring system. The Early Bird Bleed Monitoring System is the first and only FDA-approved bleed monitor for endovascular procedures. It incorporates a fully functional introducer sheath, both at 6 and 8 French size. Along the cannula of the sheath is embedded an electrode array that actually senses bleeding events while patients are undergoing transcatheter interventions. It also incorporates a user interface display that is able to notify when there's the onset and the progression of these bleeding events through both visual and audible alerts. The objective of the device is really to reduce the intra and post-procedure complication risk associated with some of these high-risk endovascular procedures, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about, which is going to be our initial beachhead opportunities, resulting eventually into a lower total cost of care and an overall improved patient outcomes in these emerging transcatheter therapies. As I mentioned, the reality is bleeding complications happen. In our specific area of targets, these complications can occur at a rate of, on an average, of 18%, and they have a significant impact when bleeds do occur in this patient population. Our initial targets are large bore interventions, but we do believe that this is a scalable platform that can go across any kind of endovascular application. Again, the impact can be significant not only on mortality, but also on the impact to the healthcare system. When you look at kind of the initial opportunities that we're engaging with this particular technology, anywhere from aortic stent grafts to transcatheter aortic valve replacements and hemodynamic support, these rates of bleeding complications occur anywhere from 13 to 30%. And this is from data from a national inpatient sample study that was reported in JAMA just 2 years ago, looking at over 17,000 patients. When you take into the consideration the rate of incidence of these bleed complications and the associated costs, there's a significant impact to the healthcare burden on the U.S. health system. Just looking at these high-risk structural heart cardiovascular procedures alone, it can be as high as $1.5 billion. And a lot of those complications are associated really with the associated interventions that are as a result of these bleeds, resulting from either blood transfusions, increased length of stay, and re-interventions that extends that cost. In addition to the structural heart targets that we're initially looking at for the use of this technology, such as TAVR, EVAR, and hemodynamic support, we have already started to engage other procedures as well, extending into high-risk coronary procedures and neurovascular. So when we look at bleed management, we do really believe that this is a potentially strategic fit for some of these strategics that play in some of these verticals, especially as they try to enhance penetration to these transcatheter technologies more broadly. In total, right now, our immediate addressable market is about 700,000 high-risk bleed patients that we've identified in the US that can result to about $1.1 billion market immediately. So what's the current paradigm? Right now, it's not until the patients present and manifest with symptoms do physicians react to these kind of internal bleeds when they undergo these endovascular procedures. So our whole thesis right now is to address the onset and the progression of these bleed complications early enough so it can reduce that clinical cascade and mitigate some of the both clinical impact as well as the cost outcomes associated with these bleeds. So how do we work? Well, as I mentioned, we use a standard endovascular access sheath as our delivery for our impedance sensors, and it includes 4 electrodes along that cannula. We're indicated for both either femoral arterial access or femoral venous access. Once the device is placed in the vessel, we generate an electrical field. And what the device is really doing is measuring in real time the differential change in the bioimpedance signal. So blood is highly conductive. So when there's extravasation and there's bleeding occurring either near the access site of the procedure or even farther up in the retroperitoneal space, that electrical field is disrupted. And we're able to detect that by a drop in the bioimpedance signal. So really what we're really doing is looking at discrete changes along that bioimpedance signal, both during the procedure and post-procedure, in order to be able to identify that there is an active bleed that is ongoing. The device works, and it works well in our animal validation models that we use to receive our de novo, which we received in March of last year. We've demonstrated 100% sensitivity and specificity. And when we looked at the volumes that were detected in terms of blood loss, it ranged anywhere from 30 to 50 cc's from a level 1 bleed all the way to what our device categorizes as a level 3 bleed, up to about 200 to 250 cc's of blood loss. That amounts to less than a half unit of blood. That's the point that we're trying to make. We're trying to get actionable information very early before there is significant symptoms that can drive improved outcomes with these patients. In addition to the animal model, we also have collected clinical data. So we ran a clinical pilot in 5 institutions across the United States, enrolled 60 patients across all comers of different types of endovascular procedures, but really targeting these high-risk procedures of large bore interventions. We were able to demonstrate very good performance in being able to detect bleeds and not detect when bleeding didn't happen with high specificity and a Cohen's kappa of 0.84. So it's an almost perfect correlation as compared to the gold standard, which was CT, so which we compared it to. We are commercial, and just to share kind of our first commercial case where we actually illustrated the clinical use of this particular technology, we actually detected a serious bleed in our first case in November. So we started selling in November, and it was in a TAVR procedure. It was an elderly woman that was undergoing a TAVR procedure while they were pushing the arterial sheath to eventually deploy the transcatheter aortic valve. Our device went off. It delivered a level 1 indication. And what they were able to do is, during the procedure, shot contrast and tried to get a fluoro image of where that leak may have occurred. Incidentally, it happened at a very high level area, right under the aortic bifurcation, ruptured the iliac artery, which potentially could have been a very detrimental retroperitoneal bleed. During the procedure, they were able to notify that very early on with the ability to be detected by the device, and was treated with a contralateral approach. They went ahead and balloon tamponade, administered protamine, and were able to really reduce the progression of the bleed, and the patient was able to be discharged in day number 3. As I mentioned, we are commercial. We're into health systems now. We're currently in 7 health systems, either under VAC review, some that have already ordered and reordered, and also others that are going trial period. We're actually initiating a trial period at the Cleveland Clinic with 5 units by the end of this month, and hopefully we can start taking orders from the Cleveland Clinic pretty soon. But we are based out of Texas. We have other, you can kind of see in those stars, primarily focusing east of the Mississippi. Our sales strategy is really to focus on a hybrid model where we are going to have regional managers manage independent distributors. We've signed 5 independent distributors to date that will give us access to tenured cardiovascular and neurovascular reps, totaling up to 60 by the end of the year. This is our 2020 operating plan that we're trying to track to. We believe that we can hit $4 million this year. Our ASP that we're targeting for this particular device is going to be over $1,500 for this year. If we can maintain our top line and through our supply chain, we think we can have gross margins about 75 to 77%. This is our 5-year pro forma. As we drive and expand regionally with this independent distributor model using direct regional managers, we feel that we can have good uptake. We also plan to launch a post-market clinical registry to demonstrate the clinical utility impact and health economic impact of the device in our systems. Part of the proceeds that I'm going to be talking about is also going to drive the launch of a next generation device, which we've already prototyped and want to deploy in 2022 using the 510(k) path, since we've already created the product code for our device via the de novo, and that's going to drive broader penetration into the market. So key accomplishments to date, we have received FDA approval through the de novo path. early last year. We have strong animal and clinical data demonstrating clinical utility and high performance of the device working as indicated. We actually have optimized and enhanced the device since prior to getting onto the market using the information from our clinical data. We've received ISO 13485 certification as well, and so we have a robust quality system to deploy and actually be commercial, and we've launched commercially. We've raised $16 million to date in preferred stock series A, B, and C, and we're currently seeking $5 million for continued commercialization, and as I mentioned, additional R&D to really scale the technology to drive broader adoption into other endovascular access opportunities. We have a very strong team of about almost 700 years of, almost 100 years, almost 100 years of experience in deploying and commercializing medical innovation. We also have a very strong and deep board of directors that are involved in medical device commercialization and development as well, and executive leadership. And we're fortunate to have a good group of scientific advisory boards that have kind of paved the way to drive this device to its current state, and we're continuing to build our key opinion and luminary network as we launch commercially. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me in the breakout. Thank you.